So I had a lot of different titles that I wanted to come up with. So I don't know, I feel like every day I had a different, but just me seemed the most appropriate because everybody know how, it seems that I'm the most self-centered individual in the world, but I'm really not. But just me was going to be something that kind of really looked at the approach that I have to life. Not fighting against anyone, but fighting for everyone in my own way. If you look at what's happened recently, if you got 100 people fighting for something, they're fighting for something different. And everybody thinks what they're doing is right. And I know I was asked to be a part of a panel to discuss what was going on, and I had to turn it down because I already knew that my way was not going to be the best way for everybody. And I think that when you're looking for a solution, sometimes you have to compromise on your own values. But for me, it was going to be what I've always done with young people. And what is that? Again, just being there for them. But when you look at what we do as individuals, if you take what you do and your philosophy and the value system that you've created as a person, it'll take you a long way in people believing that how you lead, and certainly, what happens when things hit the fan. Like everybody, I was upset by what had taken place last week. But it's a fight that I've been in for 59 years in terms of, trying to convince people at times that I'm somebody else. When probably, where it took me 30 years to just figure out the person that I am, I have to continue to build upon. And the Be One way, which has always been about the individual, it just made sense. So instead of trying to be Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Malcolm X, James Baldwin, Thurgood Marshall, or many powerful individuals throughout our time, it would probably be better for me to be the only person that I can be. So hence the title, Just Me. I hope you enjoy it. Peace.
Let me take y'all back when I was rapping in a storage room, talking to myself in the mirror like I'm bored of you, there's more to you. Pops told me step up cause there's 4 of you, you gotta dig deep, head down cause there's more to do. But the conversation kinda went like that. My dad's my best friend, so we ended with the nightcap. I make my way to Dub, say what's up with a light dap. We talking about fam and healthy conversations like that. We reminiscing about the
And so there are 5 pillars for Be One, and you said there was a 6th one that you had created. What are they?
Yeah, so the 5 pillars, when we started in 2000, the first pillar was creating social change. So the whole idea behind, if you look at the times that we live in now, and all of the recent tragedies, and certainly the way we look at each other, across the nation and even across the world, is that we had to find some type of commonality that would allow us to communicate with each other. Mm-hmm. So creating social change would be that very thing. So the first one was creating social change. The second one was be an individual first. So being an individual would allow you to think out a situation without even adopting the values of your parents. Loving someone or hating someone is intentional. So if you're taught to do certain things, then maybe you have to get to a point where you start seeing the value of the relationships with people just based on the fact that you do have things in common. So that is being an individual first. Pillar number 2. So pillar number 3 was the power of one. Now I was in love with that one for a long time, because by that time it's getting close to 2005, 2006, and I'm in White City. Mm-hmm. And I'm in White City with a whole bunch of new families and a whole bunch of new kids that were different than me. Well, much different, because a lot of the families were Spanish families that were underserved at that time. And I got a chance to start working with those families and to help the mothers and the fathers realize how powerful their kids were, and that they would have as long as I was going to be involved, they would have a voice. Right. So that was the power of one. So that was heavy for about until 2009. And then we started moving away from the district a little bit. We still would have our programs, but before that time, we were with District 9, the Eagle Point White City School District. 4, pillar 4 was all individuals are created equal in my world. So again, there's not a culmination, but the crescendo is getting real high right now. It's like really looking at, really challenging us to examine what our worlds look like. My world is going to be different than yours, and your world is probably even different than your parents' world. There's some things that you have probably started to accumulate in your world that your parents never even thought about you accumulating, like even us being here today. You're looking at someone who was born in 1961 as opposed to you being born in 88?
99.
No, 99.
Mm-hmm.
So you're born in 99. So think about the differences of that.
Right.
But in my world, we're all equal. We're all equal, but it offered an opportunity to examine that. Last year, late last year, we went to Free to Worship. And because I'm a heavy believer, I still want to be thought of or looked upon as an individual that believes what I believe in. That I'm not with the cultural norms that most Christians or most people who are religious or whatever think. I wanted to establish my own way, and I wanted to be able to communicate with people that had a spiritual background but may think differently than I do. Right. And because of the upheaval of the COVID and now the social unrest, we got number 6. We have pillar number 6, and it's live for something. As my daughter talked about wanting to fight for something, it's a noble gesture, but living for something makes a whole lot more difference to me.
Yeah. So how has this impacted your life?
I don't think it's impacted my life at all, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I'm still saddened. I'm always saddened by the fact that I see so many people that are for the cause of togetherness. Mm-hmm. But what saddens me sometimes is that there's still a lot of hatred. We're still our country is still marred by that. But I would just say that the more people, and the people that I come in contact with are, I think that there's a lot more consciousness toward it. Yeah. I think there's a lot more consciousness toward, people, thinking that, listen, we got to do better. But from my world, I've been at 59. I think I've been protesting for 59 years mm-hmm. in my own way sometimes, but 23 years and doing work with young people. I've definitely found a different way to protest, and that protest is in the form of that protest will be in the form of being consistent with what I do on a daily basis. Some would say, oh, you got to be a role model. But for me, it's just consistency in the role that I play in my everyday life. You know what I mean? So being firm, you know what I mean? And not being a hypocrite about what I do.
Yeah. So you had mentioned when we were talking a couple weeks ago that panacea is the remedy for B1. So.
Well, it's not the remedy. It's B1 is not the universal remedy, but it was going to be something that allowed the kids to have a starting point. You know, sometimes if you know a lot of young people, they grow up with the values of their parents. And one thing that I taught my kids was you have to make your own decisions. Now, the pillars of B1 is the foundation of that. Hopefully, that you are leading by example. That you're not waiting for somebody to tell you what to do or to talk you into being somebody that you're not. So it's not a universal remedy, but it is a foundation to start with. We get an opportunity to start with examining ourselves, you know, because, you know, if you know anything about sociology, you understand that we look at each other we judge ourselves through the eyes of other people, you know, and if we're doing that all the time, you know, then we'll find ourselves, you know, depression, you know, people start to talk bad about you and tell you who you are and who you're not, and then next thing you know, you're in a world of trouble trying to get past the fact that now I don't love myself because they don't love me like that.
So I know you're a big family person. How did your life as a child compare to your life as a father?
Well, I know I'm supposed to be an intelligent person, but my life sucked. You know, and, you know, not really, you know, never having met my father. And I don't know, I wonder sometimes I wish that I would have lived in a home like mine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I wish I would have lived in a home like the one that I had provided for my family. You know what I mean? With love and understanding and conversation and, you know, laughter and all of those things. But I didn't get that. I didn't get it, and it's not something that, you know, I'm mad about. But I just know that the importance of having parents in a strong family unit goes a long way in the development of young people. And I've come across a lot of families that do, and I've come across a lot of families that do not communicate. And I know I work hard to do that. I know I work hard to try to support them and let them know, you know, there's a correlation between not being able to support your kid and being able to support your kid. So, yeah, I learned some great lessons along the way.
Yeah.
But nothing compares to the way that I've raised my kids and how even at 22 and 26, I'm still, you know, very prominent in their lives.
Yeah. So were there any men in your life that helped with that? Helped shape
I think there would be people who have come into my life, you know, periodically, you know, starting with with Uncle James. Uncle James was very prominent for me because, you know, he was somebody that told me the truth. You know what I mean? That would be on me about doing different things, and so that was great. And Mark Winans, who brought me to Southern Oregon in '83. You know, he was, you know, I still miss him. You know, and he was powerful, but again, you know, I'm a stubborn individual, and I've had to learn lessons the hard way sometimes, and you know, sometimes it was probably necessary for me to not have people, and to kind of figure things out on my own.
Right. So leading into that, what did your relationships as a child teach you?
Well, I think there were some bad things that I learned.
Yeah.
And probably it was not to get too close to people. You know, not to get too close to really, good Lord, I put people through the ringers in terms of, you know, what my relationships was going to be with them. You know, and even to this day, I still have, you know, I don't really have a big, a huge set of friends, but I do have people that understand who I am.
Yeah.
You know, and don't try to press either way. But no, I've never been the type of person that wants to be close with everybody. And the people, if I tell you that Orlando De La Cruz is the best kid that I've ever worked with in all of this time, it's the facts, you know, and my feeling toward him is like, okay, no one can ever replace him at that position right there because of everything that he had to go through to get there. And I'm talking about, again, vetting the people in your life. You know what I mean? You know, some people have come through, you know, that I've loved. You know what I mean? But they don't have. But that's almost, you know, my relationship with him is almost like a barometer to what it's not for other people. It's like you're not at that status right there. So, but don't feel bad about it. It's just that this is what I feel comfortable with being able to handle. You know what I mean? God says, you know, He'll give you enough. You know, and sometimes I think early on I capped it off that this is the way I was going to do it, and this makes me the most comfortable.
Yeah. Did that affect you when you were building your family?
Absolutely.
No. Yeah.
Absolutely. It really did because, you know, first of all, trying to find someone to build a family with is rough. You know what I mean? It's easy. I mean, you know, most of us, we date a lot and, you know, and it's fun and all of that right there. But during the dating stages, rarely do we think about who we're going to marry and what person is going to be right for us and everything. And, you know, I've dated enough people that I could just say, she not the one. It's fun today, but she not the one, you know. And certainly when I get married and the kids come, and then, you know, the circle gets even tighter. You know what I mean? It's like, I gotta protect these people right here.
Do you think your schooling for sociology helped with that?
I reference it, you know, I reference it from time to time, but sociology, I mean, the schooling for that right there, I mean, I could have been a greater student, you know what I mean, but I was such a pig-headed individual because I was like, I know more than you guys. You're teaching from these books, but I got to tell you right now, my experience is like, let me tell you about this. Let me tell you about growing up in a Jewish neighborhood. Let me tell you about growing up in a black neighborhood. You know what I mean? I've got the best of both worlds in a sense, and I'm just like, yeah, you don't understand. You know, it's not just cut and dry, but it's the opportunities to grow as an individual was massive, and still is. So I don't think that, you know, I look at it now and I say, you know, it was making a decision. I think it had more to do with what my leadership was going to be at times. But I've always led whatever I've done. So it wasn't going to be, even at that time, it wasn't going to be anything new. It was just going to be what the commitment was going to be. And now 3 years after that, we have the B1. The B1 Corporation, and there's B1 for Kids, which was a nonprofit organization, partnership with White City and Eagle Point, and you know, there were so many things that were just started to happen, you know, just based on the needs of the, again, underserved communities. You know, Kids Unlimited did it in West Medford. B1 for Kids did it in White City. So we took these, you know, we were able to take something and continue to build just on the premise of we know what the kids want. We know what the parents want too, so let's get together and make it happen. Yeah, for sure.
So I know you have a interest in basketball, and you played when you were younger, and you coached. What sparked that interest for you?
Being poor,
Yeah.
you know, not having anything, not having healthy relationships at home.
Yeah.
You know. I mean, everybody wants, when you're growing up, you always play sports.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You gotta, now kids play video games, but in my time, we always played sports. But it was always something that you get away from other things. I mean, as I got older, going down to the gym was was therapy, That love wasn't there anymore, but it was still therapy to just go in and shoot around and, try to get things off of your mind. But when you're growing up, you need someone to have a conversation with you. You look at how many kids are devoid of that now. Being able to have somebody to talk to after school, and not just hey, how's your day? Good. All right. Good night.
Right.
But really having conversations like, how tell me about your life. I'm really curious. You don't look good today. You look down today, or something like that. But basketball was, playing games and all of those things. I always say I was dating basketball in high school, and I got to college, and when I got to college, it was the relationship got serious. You know what I mean? We got engaged, and it was real serious. And then after college, and after not wanting to play anymore, we broke up.
Yeah.
And coaching was probably came later on, but it was a natural because I started to work with kids that enjoyed the game as much as I used to enjoy the game, but did not put as much into it.
Right. So it gave you those things that you were missing at home.
Oh yes, because it also, you look at the relationships you develop. You develop relationships through sports. You know what I mean? So it's like you start getting different friends. And some of those friends have the same issues that you have, and they have those those voids in their lives that become common to what is going on in your life, and and then some have different lives. They have fathers, and some of the people that had fathers that was involved in what they were doing. I picked up some of their wisdoms by just watching what they was doing with their kids. I thought it was great, like you playing ball with your kid. Now, that's some beautiful stuff right there. You know what I mean? And that's how I was with my kids.
So do you think that your childhood influenced maybe your work choices now with the youth?
I think it's a combination.
Yeah.
I think it's a combination. I mean, like, if I would have won the lottery, maybe none of this happens. Maybe I'm just sitting on an island somewhere, bugging out. You know what I mean? And maybe my relationship. Maybe I never meet Orlando. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm just I go deeper inside than I had been. I mean, a lot of things can happen. I'm glad it happened this way. I'm glad it happened to where everything that I had to do, I had to work for it. All of the relationships, good and bad, I had to work for them. And I ruined a lot of relationships, and just by part of philosophy and part, sometimes I didn't think they were worthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Home is where the heart is. And certainly it's been a nice ride to be able to get to this point in my life, to own a home and to be able to pass something on to my kids. Hopefully they establish their own way. but they will always know that we bought this house to establish a legacy about what we were going to do and how we were going to celebrate our lives. 22 years in this home, and so many memories and so much that we'll be able to reflect on as we get older. But we look at the times of the family coming through, and I'm talking about friends and family, and how my wife always made sure that people felt a certain way when they came here, that the place always looked immaculate, that, you know, she was the type of person that really cared about what people or how people felt when they came here. So with all of our trinkets, you know, we love things, and because we, you know, make our own money, so we're able to do what we want to be able to do. So there's no shade in that, but I got to tell you, I'm so proud of what we've accomplished, and certainly the relationships that we've had over the years. Very proud of that. So do you realize that your father is just a regular dude?
I don't view you that way.
You don't view it that way?
No.
How would you feel if you found out that your dad was just a regular guy?
It's impossible.
Yeah?
That's because a regular person does not have the heart you do, does not have the motivation you do, even at almost 60 years old. Regular people don't do what you do every single day, whether that means just being at home or just being like at your job.
I want you to say it again. Say it again. If I'm regular, tell me about, say that again. But what you know?
It's impossible.
Okay.
You can't put your name and regular in the same sentence. It doesn't make sense, in my opinion.
So if you found out that your dad was doing things that, you know, maybe it was against my teaching, but also against the character, how would you feel about it?
That's the only sense that you would be regular, because I go against your teaching sometimes. Like I said, I'm not perfect, but that also is like, that makes you human. Doesn't make you regular. That makes you like a human being. Like, you can't always do everything the cookie cutter way, or the way that you've presented us with, this is how you should live your life, and go by these teachings. Like, you can't always do that. Sometimes you gotta go around the back to get to the front. You can't go just through the front door.
Well, I want you to know that I am not a perfect person.
I know.
And because I'm not, there's sometimes that even things that I do, I say to myself, why? But there's a deeper construct in that. When you look at there's a term called what's the name of the term? Oh my gosh. Attachment therapy. And it has to do with the people that raised you. You grew up at a time where, you know, you had some difficulties, you know what I mean, the way that you thought about yourself. Talk about that for a minute.
I still have those difficulties at 22.
Why?
I don't view myself the way that I'm very much fake it until you make it type of person. Mm-hmm. And people in my circle can definitely say all these nice things about me, about like, oh, you have so much confidence, you're so wise, and stuff like that. But those are things that I think along the way until I actually do, because of my own mental health and everything like that. I very much am the same girl that I was in middle school that did not like herself at all.
Right. Well, again, a lot of people would probably say, well, why? You know, why did you go through all of that? You know, why was it necessary for you to go through that type of trauma in the Young household? We had love in this house. What made you feel like you could that you needed to go through those things?
Through trauma?
Yeah.
I mean, all the trauma that I have experienced that even me and you haven't even had a conversation about. It's all put me to where I am now so that I'm able to deal with like my own issues and handle things by myself. But it's like trauma shapes you, good or bad, and like it just makes you who you are. And it also, it's like it's always a lesson the whole time, whether you're completely over it or still stuck on it. It's just always shaping you every day as you process it.
All right. So last question. If you had if somebody said, "Tell me about your dad," what would you tell them?
He's very wise and smart, but he's also very stubborn and stuck in sometimes his way. But he'll listen, but it may not change because in the end, you're damn near 60 years old, so you can't really change your mind at this point in life.
Peace.
Growing up under my dad was, I think it has blessings and curses, but I think they intertwine with the way he challenges you with some adversity and challenges you in ways that other people can't. It really makes you think about things that you're doing. And as when you're young growing up, you don't really realize and understand the messages until you get to the age I'm at now and kind of understand what he was talking about and preparing me for different things I was going to face in life. And so I think that was one of the things growing up that I had to deal with and try to figure out why he was so hard on me and my sister, and trying to figure out why he was coming at us certain ways. And then as I get older and get through high school, get through college, and now in adulthood, I understand why those challenges and adversity were thrown in my face. And I think I've been able to respond to some of those things.
Well, I didn't always agree with some of Will's methods. Sometimes it was very difficult to stand back and let him lead the way he chose to raise our children. There were times in which the air was really thick in our house. We never believed in doing punishment from the standpoint of taking things away from them or doing groundings or things of that nature. Punishment in our house was Dad didn't talk to you. And for our children, that was the worst possible thing that could happen, was their dad just shut down. He didn't talk. And it was a time for them to reflect upon their actions, the decisions that they had made that went against what Will always referred to as our teachings. And so he would remain silent until he felt enough time had passed for them to learn a lesson. And I oftentimes felt in the middle of that. And it was difficult because my heart broke for my children, because they would be like, when is Dad going to talk to me again? When is Dad going to talk to me again? And I'd, try to be that middle person and say to Will, come on, we've got to talk this out. It's going to take time. Let it go. He'd always tell me to let it go. And eventually, it reached that point where he'd say, it's time to sit down, and it would be family meeting time. and then we'd go back and we'd revisit whatever the issue was, and he'd ask the kids, you know, what they learned from that lesson. So I know if our daughter was here, she would also be able to say similar things that Alex has, in that time it was hard to understand why he did those things, but now as they are adults, they can look back and reflect and see that those lessons taught them a lot. It was very difficult at the time, and as the mom, I definitely felt, you know, in the middle at times. I didn't always agree with the way that he did it. So that's my honest answer.
His standard is a lot different than people are accustomed to. He expects greatness from himself, from his family, and so when he puts so much energy into something, he expects to get that in return. And when he doesn't feel that somebody's respecting his time or respecting the things that he's doing for them, I think it's hard for him to accept, and I think that could be for anybody, but it's definitely different with my dad, and he just expects people to be great, and the things that he's trying to teach and the time and effort that he puts into it, he just wants it in return, and he just wants you to feel that his passion and the things and his expertise and the things that he's trying to get across to them is, he just wants them to be able to kind of to feel it themselves.
And I think to piggyback on that, I mean, there's few people that will let into our inner circle. Few people. I mean, like this young man standing here right now, is one of them. And, those people that he lets into our life, he will give the shirt off his back any day of the week. And, so he will give anything to anyone that he lets into this circle. And again, what he expects of them is great. And when they let him down, they often receive the wrath of Will. And those are his words. He would say that. He is hard on him because he would give anything for them. And when they let him down, that is very disappointing for him. There are aspects of him that have changed. He has softened to some degree, and I'm speaking to that from a personal standpoint as his wife. Will and I have known each other since I was almost 18 years old. We started dating when I was about 20 years old. And so I feel that, I know him next to Pete probably better than anyone else. But he definitely has become more sensitive, able to be receptive to others' input, more than he used to, willing to listen, willing to take ownership when he's wrong, willing to admit wrong. Whereas in the past, he wouldn't. He would just be quiet. He wouldn't say sorry or he's wrong. He would just be quiet. So to a degree, he has changed, but I think he's always going to be Will. And he's the man that I love. I'm not trying to change him, but I think that there are aspects of his personality that have softened. The edges have softened as he's gotten older.
Yeah, nobody, especially in our family, we don't ever want our dad or our husband to change, but I think with time people evolve. I think they evolve into whether somebody different or just, taking another step in their life. We all have to evolve with the things that are going on and different chapters and life events that go on. But I wouldn't say change, and obviously being away and kind of distant from, not necessarily distant, but not in the house every day and around him every day. I can feel some sort of change in terms of might be becoming, not necessarily soft, but when I talk to my dad now, it's more he's listening and wanting that input and wanting to learn more and wanting to know more about what's going on. And for me, being away from my family, it's something that I've got to get better at and evolve with, is sharing more and giving more, so that it feels like I'm still here and it still feels like they're with me. But my dad's always going to be my dad and who he is, and I wouldn't ask him to change one bit because of what he's done for the thousands of people that he's been around, but more importantly for the four of us in our household. I don't know. I mean, I think deep down, he obviously loves his family. It's hard to say. I mean, he loves so many different things. Obviously, the four of us, but I think he loves what he does and the ability that he has to impact and change lives. But I guess if I had to pick one thing, he's always said, I love my kids. So that might be a little bias on my end, but I don't know. That's a pretty tough question.
I'm going to say something totally different, and it may come across to some people as strange, but it's something Will and I have talked about even most recently, and that is himself. Because you have to love yourself before you can love anybody else. And in fact, I believe is the next pillar of being one. Love yourself. You have to love yourself before you can love anybody else. So you have to have a deep love for yourself. So love yourself. And then from there, will say his family, because I don't want to make a division between myself and our kids, because we are one unit, the four of us. His mother is in there, his sister is in there. I mean, family has got to be inclusive of so many people. I don't want to make a separation there. His work, but loving himself, I think, has to be there, and loving God has to be in there too. It's hard to say what does he love the most, but I have to say he loves himself. He has to continue to work on loving himself, because he can't love everything else without loving himself first. And that's for all of us. That's a message that he wants to get out there. I know that. We've talked about it at length most recently. So that's my answer to that question.
So, Just Me, again, is about my own journeys. If you think about what you have to endure each and every day just to become a person, you'll understand the difficulties that come with it. Most of us are trying to find out who we are, but it's usually based on what everybody else is doing. We dress like everybody else, we think like everybody else, and that seems to drive the other issues, whether we have racial tension or racial issues, whether we're a Republican or a Democrat. All of these things are based on the lack of understanding as individuals, and certainly low self-esteem. So Just Me chronicles the life of someone who runs a company based on the individual accounts on each and every day. So let's look at it like this. The B1 has 8 pillars. So in the 8 pillars, the idea was supposed to be the start of growth to the end. So if number 1 pillar was creating social change, and me, I'm on the number 8th pillar right now, which is freedom. I'm about to experience freedom like I never have before. So I'll go through them. Number 1, creating social change. So to create social change, you have to find a way to change the circumstances around you. So if you want to help people, then you make that, your campaign to help. But in doing so, you have to have a certain standard in which you do it. Number 2, be an individual first. To be an individual first means to to not acquiesce to what other people are doing. You know, it's so hard to be an individual when you see what everybody else is doing and then you start to like and emulate what they do. Number 3 is the power of the individual. The one thing that young people don't realize is that they have so much power that is just based on their own way of thinking. Number 4, all individuals are created equal in my world. Now, this was something that started a different campaign, and this started in 2008 when we went from the original B1 logo to me sitting on top of the world and trying to figure out, almost like a ball of confusion, trying to figure out what was going to be the next way to attack, to reference, and ultimately to change the community. Number 5, free to worship. At the end of the day, my manifesto, my movement, ultimately became a ministry. So free to worship was about not looking at religion as separatism, but it would be one way. You're free to worship any way you want to, right? This is what you think, then you would apply it to your life. Number 6, live for something. Live for something is great for each and every one of us, because again, if you are when you're affiliated with when you're politically affiliated, it is understood that you have the same idea. Can you understand? Can you realize that you have the same idea as one person that leads a particular party? 150 million people voting for one person is really endorsing that one person's idea. And if you break it down, you understand one thing. Rich people and poor people don't have the same idea. Only when it pertains to being rich or poor. Number 7, love yourself. Now, lucky number 7 is probably the hardest one to do out of anything. To love yourself. Give you an example. If I came to any young person these days, I don't care who it is, the socio-economic background, I can tell you one thing. If I asked them to tell me something good about themselves, they would have a hard time doing it. But if I asked them to tell me something bad about themselves, they can give me about 4, 5, or 6 within a minute. Why? Not just because they feel bad about themselves, but because they're worried about what other people are going to think. If a young lady says, I look cute, she's looking for judgment from other people. To love yourself, and the Bible states, love is stronger than anything else. Dissension, hate, anything that is negative, love is stronger. So love yourself. Because if you don't, you can't love anyone else or anything else. Believe me on that one. And again, the final one, the freedom. Most of us have had to work for someone. Once you get to my age, you understand you've worked for about 10 different people. The average person, you've had 10 different jobs. And you've always worked for somebody who hadn't appreciated the person that you are, which if you've done it long enough, then that becomes the way you look at yourself. The freedom of it is to be able to create something that people remember. I call myself the quintessential mentor. And I say to myself and others that there's no better mentor than Will. Why? Because I'm always going to be there for individuals. And my investment is going to be in the individual and not what the individual is supposed to do. Not their potential or not who I think they should be, but the way they treat others. Those are the most important things to me. I'm about to experience the greatest freedom that I have ever felt in the next couple of weeks. And maybe by the time I turn 70, I'll be able to come with something different. But at 60, I feel damn good about where I am today and what I want to become. But stay tuned for that 60th birthday and what entails after that. It's going to be major. And you know what I say always when I sign off. Peace.